I am not speaking for any law enforcement agency. I am speaking as Neil Franklin, a retired Maryland State Trooper, a former Baltimore City Commander, and a current law enforcement official. I'm speaking for me, using my experience and my background and sharing that with you. Another perspective that I have is I was also a member of a community organization called the Heroin Task Force. Initially, you probably say, okay, that's an organization that's going to be about, ridding the communities of heroin. Okay, yes, it is in a sense, but it's a grassroots organization. It was formed primarily by a handful of women who lost their sons to drug overdoses. Okay, so this task force was about education and treatment for those who are addicted to drugs. Education and treatment. So that gave me another perspective as I interacted with people who lost loved ones because of what we're dealing with. So with that, and LEAP, we're about harm reduction. You heard Mark say we do not condone the use of drugs. We simply do not. But what this is about is harm reduction, and I'll talk a little bit about that as we go through the slides, as you'll see. We'll do some comparisons as to the way it is now and the way it could be as it relates to harm reduction. Now this thing's probably not going to want to work, but it's okay with me. And since we want to do that, we'll just go right through that. And I'll have business cards for you after we're done. That way you'll have my contact information. You can get a hold of me at any time through email or by phone if you care to contact me. Now, this is the goal for the war on drugs. The government's goal. Back in the early 70s under Nixon. This is what they came up with. To lower the incidence of death, disease, crime, and addiction by eliminating drugs. I'll talk briefly about that, but as we go further, you'll see that we're not eliminating drugs. Talk about what LEAP is. International nonprofit. Okay? Former law enforcement officials, we're dedicated to ending the war on drugs, period. Straightforward. Now, with LEAP, we're about lowering the incidence of death, disease, crime, and addiction by eliminating the war on drugs. It's time. It's been time. Failed policy. LEAP considers the war on drugs to be a failed policy. That's obvious. You know, in the 1920s, we had prohibition alcohol. Though noble, when they enacted the 18th Amendment, it only took them 13 years. 13 years is still a long time, but it only took them 13 years to realize, we made a wrong turn, folks. Let's turn around and go back, take another road. 13 years. Because what they gave birth to was Al Capone and his cronies. You guys familiar with the St. Valentine's Day Massacre? Well, we have one every day in this country because of the war on drugs and drug wars. So Al Capone was about protecting his turf. Today, drug dealers are about protecting their turf, protecting their money. I thought we were getting smarter as time went on. It's been almost 40 years, folks, and we haven't learned the lessons of the 1920s. When a policy has obviously failed, corrective action should be taken to achieve the desired goals. I love this by Will Rogers. You know what? If you find yourself in a hole, stop digging. We're still digging. But only we brought in a couple bulldozers and backhoes to help out. We gave up with the shovel. Failed policy. The war on drugs is a failure domestically and internationally. domestically here and internationally. Last year, over 6,000 people killed in Mexico alone. Mexico alone. We haven't gotten into South America. Okay? We haven't gone to the Far East. Just Mexico alone. 250 plus law enforcement officials in Mexico last year were assassinated. It's not just the folks in the game who are dying. The cost is tremendous, and we hear about this. Human cost and economic cost. Economically, Professor Jeffrey Myron from Harvard University did a study last year. He's good. And this is low ball. Low ball figures that he was talking about when it was $76 billion. $76 billion on an annual basis. $76 billion that we lose because taxes are not paid on those. But more importantly, this is what we're spending. What we're spending for what I do in law enforcement and corrections and the judicial system. $76 billion. What's the economy? What kind of state are we in right now? It's in the toilet. Before I move on, economically. There's still some things that people don't realize and don't think about. We're not talking about the money that we save because crime will go down. Because those who are addicted will be able to just change the entire outlook. Here's what I mean by that. First of all, if there are programs in place to help someone who is addicted to where they don't have to pay for what they need to sustain themselves, because once again, we're about legalizing every single drug. LEAP is about legalizing every single drug. Now, when I say legalize, I'm not talking about a free-for-all, folks. Right now, our drugs are unregulated. There are no standards. There's nothing out there to protect people from drugs. You can get whatever you want, whenever you want, how much you want. Okay? There's no regulation right now. So when an addict needs treatment, whether it's supervised under physician or whatever, they don't have to pay for it. So if you ask an addict, what is their most difficult challenge? For most will say it's not the addiction part, it's financing the addiction. Financing the addiction. There are a lot of heroin addicts who go to work every day. The issue is they have a job that pays well enough where they can pay for their habit. But for those who don't, and it's many, they come after you guys. They come after anyone who has a wallet in their pocket that has a home that's unprotected or even protected. But they have to get the money that they need to support their habits. So crime would go down. Insurance costs would go down. There are tons and tons of related costs, indirectly related costs that will go down for us as a society. It's unbelievable. Nobody's ever really tried to figure that out. I assume it would be very difficult. So we're just dealing with things that are directly related. That's how Jeffrey Myron figured out his costs. But once again, they were low ball. Yes.
Have they figured out the productivity costs of, the actual people that are addicted that could be going to treatment and then become productive? So that's not even entered into that either.
It's not even entered into it. If we were to, the other piece of that is, if we were to take some of this $76 billion, we only need a third of it, folks. The rest can go back into our coffers so that we can get tax breaks, okay? We only need a third of that to attack education the way it needs to be attacked, to approach it in our schools and family programs, and for treatment. A third of that would do wonders, would absolutely do wonders, and would just change so much of the things that we're dealing with right now, from the next